Hi, this is Barbara Sanders, and this YouTube channel is Sacred Metamorphoses that I just started this summer, late summer. And I am so pleased to introduce you to Barbara Moss. But first, I want to say if you'd like to subscribe, feel free to do that below. I asked Barbara Moss to do this, and some of the people I've talked to so far are sort of mental health, spiritual, meditative, sort of healing kind of people. And Barbara Moss fits right in there, but you don't know that yet. So I met Barbara at meetings, women's meetings, many years ago. And then about 15 years ago or so, I joined the Nashville Women's Breakfast Club, which was a wonderful business women's club. We met every morning, though, Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., which was really hard to do. But we did that for years and years and years. And right after I joined, Barbara asked me to go to lunch. And I remember her hat. And I remember her hat. And what a kind thing to do. You were so kind to do that. And I saw her do it with lots of other new members. And when I was sitting there at lunch talking with you, Barbara, I was like, what's this cool woman? Who is this woman? She's so cool. And I think I must have asked, are you married? And you were like, no. And she can tell you that story. And, and I was like, what? So in a minute, Barbara can tell you why she loves me so much. But that's just for a minute. I want to say a couple other things. I also, oh, and she's a great storyteller, but she's going to tell you some stories. Also, Barbara, I admired you because you would speak up in groups. And I do that too, or used to do that better, not in an aggressive way, but just in a, hey, I'm out here, let me talk, let me talk. And I liked your courage and your bravery because so many women, even in women's groups, would be quiet and not say much. So I really liked you for that. Also, Barbara's been an Athena Award winner in Nashville, and some people know about that. I also would see you at holiday parties for psychoanalysis, which we can talk about. And that here's the thing I learned at lunch is that Barbara had raised two beautiful daughters singly on her own, and that you were like a maverick and a feminist from way back because of your generation. You were one of the few female litigators in Nashville, if I'm correct. And that was just amazing to me. So that was Barbara's earlier career. Then in her older years, you can tell us the age, she started a new business, founded Elder Law of Nashville, which is incredible. I used her when my mother was going through her stroke year and when she died. And Barbara, one of the things you did for me, I wasn't sure I was going to say this and I might cry, but one of the things you did for me is that there was a mistake made. And when it happened, it wasn't a big mistake. Well, for some people it was, but there was a mistake. And Barbara called me up and was like, oh my gosh, I just need to let you know we've made a mistake. Here's what's going. And it was the kindest, most wonderful thing you could do. I was stressed, distressed, in grief, busy being an executor, and you really helped me through what was really kind of like an awkward situation with some of my family members. And I really appreciated that about you, that you could own up to some of the mistake and that it was a confusing thing. So it wasn't y'all's fault completely. I know that. Anyway, I think her business is very successful. You should use her too. And now I'm going to let you, Barbara, introduce yourself. But first, you have to tell people why you love me.
Oh my goodness. Barbara introduced me to my husband. She said, you could date Tom Campbell. And I said, okay. And she sent us an e-introduction, and I'm the pushy kind of person. And I pushed my way into that relationship, and it has been amazing. And that was actually, we've been married 17 years now, Barbara. And every year that when we have an anniversary, I bless your name.
And
Yeah.
she used to, in meetings, Barbara would bow to me, which is really,
I knelt to you once.
that was one of two matches I ever made, and the other one didn't work. So thank you.
Great.
It was great, though. You deserve someone wonderful, and I knew him as being wonderful too. And tell us about you,
Okay.
your story.
I'm gonna tell everybody about me. And what I want to talk about is a very complicated journey that I've had to finding my spiritual path and how it's been intertwined with therapy and work. And Barbara, if you can make it so that I can share my screen, that would be good.
Let me see if I can make you a co-host, and you might be able to help me with that. Hold
Or you
on.
could go in and make me the host unless you're, and then if you
Yeah.
need to share your,
I,
I'll make you the host.
do you
The
know
three
where I
little
go?
dots up in the right-hand corner,
Let's see if I can make you a
make
co-host.
host.
Oh, in the top corner?
Yeah,
No. In the
top right-hand corner of my screen are three little dots.
okay, hold on.
In the top right-hand corner of my picture. Sorry about that.
Of
Of
your
my picture.
oh, okay, hold on. Your picture. All right. If I make you a host, then let's
Let me share my screen.
yeah, and then you'll need to make me host so I can do the recording of it.
Sure. No,
Keep it.
it's still recording.
I know it is, but then I'll
Oh,
need
okay.
to do
Right.
all. Okay,
Right.
you're about to be a host.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
and we'll probably forget all that, and that's okay.
Okay. Now that we've made our way through that, I often use what in my law practice, something that's called a my purpose story. So that's why I have pictures of me that I'm going to show you to sort of illustrate how this all unfolded. So first, I want to talk about how I became an accidental atheist. And let me share my screen. Uh, so I came to Vanderbilt in 1968, and the 60s got to Vanderbilt in 1970. And I was a hippie co-ed. That's me with the long hair parted down the middle and the wire rim glasses. I lived in the first co-ed dorm at Vanderbilt long before they made those horrible buildings, Carmichael Towers, into co-ed dorms. And while I was at Vanderbilt, I went off with a group that included medical students, law students, undergraduates, teamed up with the TVA, which had a van with an x-ray machine in it, to take health fairs, which were diagnostic services, to isolated Appalachian towns. And that was such a great thing to do. Dan Rather came down and interviewed us. This was 50 years ago, so get that into perspective. And in the process, I met a charming, handsome pediatrician who rode a motorcycle. Okay, that's a picture of us getting married after I got out of undergraduate school, before my frontal lobe was fully formed. And after I got out of undergraduate school, I spent with a degree in philosophy. I spent a couple of years on the job market as a secretary and a waitress. And yeah. And finally, I'd never been in a law office before. And finally, I went, well, I know how to go to school. And that's a picture of me graduating from Vanderbilt Law School with my first daughter and my mom, who ultimately got dementia. Now, while I was in the philosophy program at Vanderbilt, which was the second largest department at Vanderbilt after English, because they had fantastic professors, I took a course on the philosophy of religion from a guy named Clem Dorr. And what we looked at is, can you reason your way into a benevolent, omnipotent God? And the answer is no, you can't. Okay. So after I got out of law school, I was the first woman hired by any of the big downtown law firms. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this was in 1977. The term glass ceiling had not been invented. And, I didn't really understand that I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I didn't really understand that that was going to be hard. It was 10 years before there was another woman as lawyer or judge in a case with me. And there were good parts and bad parts about not understanding that it was hard. I didn't know that I was isolated. I, I, what happens these people were not bad people. They didn't want to discriminate against me. But what happens in these situations is that you notice that person's mistakes. And so for the first 10 years, I thought, am I not good enough? And then finally I went, wait a minute, that's not what's happening. And it took, wow, it took a lot of, yeah, it took a lot to get there. Okay. Now, while I was at this law firm, and I've divorced a lot of law firms over time, but while I was at this law firm, I had my second daughter. And then when my girls were 7 and 4,
Mm.
now catch that little one with her one eyebrow cocked up. When they were 7 and 4, the charming, handsome pediatrician signed the divorce papers on his way to drug rehab. Now, I was already in therapy. I got in therapy when I was 28 years old. I didn't mention that my ex-husband had 2 children when I met him. And when I was 23 and they were 13 and 11, I started law school and they moved in with me. So it was, wow, I've been through a lot. Anyway, after the divorce, I was a single mom and a trial lawyer for 22 years. But before the divorce, I had those 2 little girls. My husband, the pediatrician, had been seeing a mom, a single mom with 2 little girls. And they had been in a car wreck and she was killed. And they were screaming in pain in the emergency room when he walked through. And he came home and he told me that story. And I took a deep breath. And when I blew it out, I was an atheist. You don't grow up saying I want to be an atheist, but then I'm the kind of person who can't force myself to believe. So I became an accidental atheist. Now, let's go forward a few years. I had to get sober. And about that time, I had said to a friend of mine, I need a church community. And she said, well, to go to West End Methodist, you have to believe that life is a mystery. But to go to the Unitarian Church, you don't have to believe anything, which is not true. You have to be at least a humanitarian. So I found my place in the Unitarian Church. Then I had to get sober. And I had a sponsor who was an ex-atheist Unitarian Universalist in Vanderbilt Divinity School. And she said, Barbara, why don't you read this book by Jack Kornfield called A Path with Heart? And I discovered that I was a Buddhist. So while I was a trial lawyer, I had the case of the first fully belted child in America killed by an airbag. That was here in Nashville. And that case was set for a trial like October 1. And there was going to be a 10-day silent retreat with Jack Kornfield in Marin County, California on October 2. And I knew that I'd either be in trial or my calendar would be completely open. So I signed up for this. This is before mindful meditation was cool. I signed up for this 10-day silent retreat. And I went on this retreat and it was amazing. It was about being present in the moment. They laughed about one of the teachers that had a t-shirt that says, meditation, it's not what you think. It's about being present in the moment. And the other thing that convinced, so I was looking for a higher power. And in Buddhism, there's something, I pull this up to get this right. There's something called the 10 perfections. So Buddhism came along before the written language really was with us. So many things in Buddhism are numbered. The 10 perfections are the things that are available to us inside. And they're giving, generosity, ethics, renunciation, or the ability to find contentment, wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, resolve, loving kindness, and equanimity. And I saw that without going into my childhood, I knew that without having those things inside me, I could never have mothered those children better than my mother did.
Mhm.
So that became my higher power. Now, I persisted and persisted, and then 17 years ago, I married this guy, the one that Barbara introduced me to. And wow, what a blessing. He has 3 children. I have 2 children. They all live in Nashville. I have 8 grandchildren from 14 down to 2 months old. And and I'm able to find the joyfulness in my life. So let me stop sharing. That's all the pictures I have. And talk about how. So once I married a psychoanalyst, I realized they never retire. And you can't do litigation in your 60s and 70s. And so one day I picked up my head and said, litigation is kind of stressful. And I looked around, and seniors were the most underrepresented people in Nashville and nationally. We're 1 in 7 of the population. So in true trial lawyer fashion, I said, I'm going to open my own law practice doing things I don't know how to do. And that was 10 years ago. And I've always backed into the right job. So you wouldn't have picked a nerdy little girl from Memphis to be a trial lawyer. And I said, I'm going to be an elder law attorney. And what I didn't know is I would get to taking people's anxiety away. Oh my gosh. And so I've done it now for 10 years. And it's only in the last couple of years that I really connected with the fact that the Dalai Lama says that kindness is my religion. And I saw that that was my spiritual path, that I had found my spiritual path. And then only in the last few months, I went, wait a minute, back when I was a warrior, that was my spiritual path too, to stand up for other people, to be the trail. You know how you know the trailblazer? It's the one with the arrows in her back.
I've never heard that. That's great.
So to be the trailblazer, I just looked today, I got an email. They nominated 12 people to be on the board of the Nashville Bar Association. 8 of them are women.
What a change.
So now, I thought that I've been practicing law for 47 years. I thought after 47 years, it would all be solved. It is not all solved. It is still hard for women to claim an equal place. But I'll tell you what, in the bar associations, they're like, the women do all the work. They really do a good job. That has been solved. Money, partnership, maybe not. Well, yeah, there's a lot of aspects to that. It's about abusing young people with the billable hour, but still, it hasn't totally evened out for women yet, but it's certainly come a long way. And so, wow, and you may have some questions about all that, but that's how I ended up in this complicated way, which included a lot of therapy, by the way, lots and lots of therapy, best money I've ever spent. And that's how I found my spiritual path.
That's remarkable. And I didn't know Barbara framed things in this way when I first asked her to talk with me. And so I'm just so pleased that it's happening to all of us sort of at the same time, the spiritual, again, framework or way of looking at life and death and everything else. Thank you, Barbara. It was beautiful. And I love seeing your children I'll tell you one more story. So one more story, and then we'll get back to you. Dot Dobbins, who's another attorney, female attorney around.
Whose child was a good friend of my child.
Yes, she lived across the street from me on Rosewood Avenue years ago near Belmont. And I think I was just about to, or I just had a baby, I think. Anyway, she told me that your daughter and her daughter used to hang around, and it was so troubling them being teenagers and how hard it was. And at one point Dot said, "Can you imagine a tattooed, sweaty guy with his arm around your daughter?" And I was like, oh my God. Anyway, what I watched with her and with you, these children grow up and they are incredible young women, old, mid-aged women now. It's
Yeah.
just incredible. But yes, they went through some hard years or made it hard for their mothers, but they grew up. The,
Well, all
yeah,
our children, we are so lucky. All of our children, the ones that are married to people we like. The
and
ones
that's
that
good.
have children have turned out to be fantastic parents. Wow, can you
And they
ask
let
for
you see
anything
them and
better
they
than
let you take care of them, unlike some families, which is wonderful. And you
we
enjoy
had? We had for the when my the oldest grandson is 14, and when he was born, we said, okay, I had no family in town once I was a single mom. So I said, every Saturday morning from 8 to 12, you can bring them. And it eventually got so hard, we hired teenagers to help us. We call it the cousin posse.
it. Wow. Yeah. I also know of you at your Athena Award in particular. Maybe it was in a speech you gave there or later in a speech at the Junior League. Barbara, well, other people testified to this, witnessed this, is that she was so good to other young women lawyers and helped them along, go through some of the trials and tribulations that you did. So I've always respected and admired you. I'm not sure how you did all that. Your journey is very different than mine. I waited forever to get married, and at the time I got married, I realized, well, most of my friends been married once or twice at least. Other thing, though, I need to say is that your first husband in that picture looks like my brother, who's an internist or was and is retired. That was weird to see. And I
Yeah,
also worked at the Vanderbilt Student Health Coalition, but after you did for a summer, and we were doing health fairs around town, but we didn't do anything as cool as go to Appalachia. That was really
yeah,
wonderful. Such wonderful
yeah.
thing. Anything else you want to share about yourself?
Um, there's another side to this too. It's people don't ever think of lawyers as having a creative side, but when you're a trial lawyer, you're putting on a play and you don't exactly know what the people in the play are going to say. And then we had a writing group. Tom and I were in a writing group, but now my marketing, as you know, is about telling a story.
Right,
And I pick the writing prompt and I write the story. And
right,
it's a lovely way to find that creative side too.
right. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I remember when you started writing, at least publicly, she did a lot of op-eds and I had done some op-eds, but Barbara, in your op-eds early on was about teaching the law, educating people about the law. And then it became more and more creative and you write beautifully and tell stories beautifully. And I hate to say this, I don't hate it totally, but it's a different way of looking at it. Therapists too are performers in some ways, like litigators, in that we're genuine, hopefully, and authentic to ourselves and to our clients that we're working with. But there's a lot of
You have to remember what to do
yeah,
and what
it's
to say and
yeah,
how to
yeah, and
work it
have
out.
the
And
innuendos and the subtleties of what's going on and have to listen well. And you did that really well with me when I was going through stuff with my mother. I so appreciate you. Yeah. So, how would a client find you if they wanted to find you?
oh my gosh, the internet.
Yeah, just type in Barbara Moss, Elder Law of
Type in
Nashville.
Barbara Moss. In fact, my name is more searched than the business. So, I'll tell you another thing that I learned as a lawyer, and this was about 3 years into the practice of law. Uh, this was when I was a trial lawyer. Um, I worked for the best plaintiff's lawyer in Nashville. His name was John Connors, and we had sued Vanderbilt and some doctors for something they deeply deserved. It just happens. Our client was made blind because they didn't tell her the side effects of the medication. But anyway, we walked into the room where our client was going to be deposed, and there were all these lawyers standing around the table. And my boss walked around and was so warm and cordial to every lawyer. And I thought, that is the most intimidating thing I've ever seen. I can do that. And so part of my path has just been to be warm and cordial. And you know, it's incredible because the people that are going to be your friends, you're going to make friends with. And the people that are going to be your enemies, you're going to scare.
Mhm. Mhm. I have to say, Kamala Harris came to mind about the debate, walking over and shaking
I know.
author's hand.
I
And yeah,
know.
you have
It's
portrayed that.
it's
Yeah.
scary to the people that are scared of you or would put you down or whatever. So I made a lot of friends in Nashville. I have I just really treasure my work with colleagues. And so I'm pretty well known and you can
So,
find.
yes, you are. And
Yeah.
everybody knows Barbara Moss, and her hat became a signature at some point. Let me ask this, with all the traveling I've heard of you doing from Belize to the Danube, would you say anything about traveling and how that's been part of your creative and or spiritual journey too? Or is it? Because I know
Well,
in this newsletter you
you
wrote,
know, it's certainly a part of our lives. And you know, as I just bought a book because of a quote somebody gave me. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, 16 million copies sold. And this was, as I understand it, Barbara, a psychiatrist who spent years in Nazi death camps. So what a reason I wanted that book is I saw a quote where he said, they can take everything away from you except your ability to react to what's happening. You get to choose that. So that to me has been the secret of everything. It's been the secret to travel. You know, Tom, if you want to know whether you should marry somebody, go to a country where neither of you speak the language.
and
Yeah, and see it.
be with each other 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and find out what they're like when things aren't going their way. And so puts you in a situation where maybe your flight gets canceled or, you know, and you have to choose how you react to that.
Mhm.
So it's been great for our relationship, but it's just been great for learning to
Mhm.
learn to choose happiness,
Mhm.
choose contentedness.
Mhm.
Things aren't perfect for us. There's no family without some family drama.
Well, and you're the first one that taught me that you only do as well as your uh, say it. Say
You're
it.
you're only doing as well as your child that's doing the least well.
Yes, yes. Most upset child. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about aging yourself?
Um, I feel lucky.
Me
Uh,
too.
I feel so lucky. We the very first article I wrote for the Tennessean was they put the title to it. They called it Primer for a Working Parent. Okay. But I was giving people the things that I had learned. Keep a sense of humor. Take care of yourself. So I have always worked out. And then when Tom and I got married, uh, we had two different gym memberships. So he said, let's get some extra equipment and let's have a personal trainer come here once a week. So that's what we did. And then when COVID happened, we said, can you come 3 times a week? And it's been fantastic because I outsourced all the willpower. I don't have to
Pay
think
for
about
it. You're going to pay for it. You might as well do it, huh?
it. If she shows up, I work out. I don't have to think about how I should have worked out today and I should work out tomorrow. And that's been fantastic. And we've been able to keep our health. But, you know, we don't know when our health is going to decline.
Mhm.
And
Well,
partly because of my job, I know we're gonna decline and die. And and I'm just lucky it hasn't hit me yet, but it will.
mhm.
And you see that glass ball behind me next to the Mac?
Yes.
That's the butt of a joke. It doesn't tell us anything.
The ball. Well, I have to tell you and the viewers here just one other story. So, a psychoanalyst from St. Louis came down last weekend, and we were talking with her and our neighbors. And one of the things she said, she's a single woman, and she keeps a DNR, advanced directives, on her car seat beside her everywhere she goes. And then she talked about someone she knew thought about, and I started talking to people about this, thought about getting DNR tattooed on their chest. I love it. I really want to come up with a beautiful symbol for DNR so that when someone tries to put those things on you, they're like, oh, I can't do that. Because there's so many times people don't follow DNR.
Well, you want me to tell one more story about how I ended up wearing hats?
Yes.
Okay, we'll make this the last story. In 1982, no, 1992, I went to DC for a seminar, and my law school classmate, Al Gore, was the vice president. He's done very well for someone who didn't finish law school. And a friend of mine was his lawyer and was doling out parking spaces on the White House grounds. And I thought, this is the highest muckety muck I'll ever know. And I bought a hat. And when I wore that hat, I thought about my friend. And then I bought another hat. And then every day, the lawyers in my firm would say, "Where's your hat?"
Yeah.
I thought, okay, this is a shopping opportunity. And I was born on Halloween. I was born to wear a costume. So well, I started buying hats. And here's what I learned.
Yes.
Everyone talks to me when I wear a hat. I mean, homeless people and wait staff, and I hear these great stories. And and I don't know anyone who's actually confident, but I look confident when I wear a hat.
Mhm.
And that's a very important thing for a trial lawyer. So I just started wearing hats all the time. And it never was about branding, but it has become a fun thing in my life.
That's interesting because I remember hearing the story years ago, and so I don't remember it clearly, but I thought it was something about being one of the few litigator trial lawyer women, and that it became a signature for you, and people respected you, or just at least knew you were different. Besides being female, you were different from all the rest. And so I've always thought, well, I need to find something, but I haven't found anything like the hat. So anyway, that's a great story. And you still wear hats, but I've seen you more often in the last few years without your hat than I've
It
ever seen.
doesn't seem to go in a home office as much.
Doesn't do as great with your tennis shoes on. Yeah.
Okay, well, let
I
me
want
make
to
you the
thank you.
host again.
Yes, please make me the host again if you know how to do that. And I'm sorry that took so long out of our talk together, but thank you. Again, if you want to get in touch with Barbara Moss, Elder Law of Nashville, she's got a great website, sends out newsletters, has a great staff. They also helped me when Barbara was traveling or not available, which is great. And thank you, Barbara. I appreciate it. I really do. I owe you.
Thank you, Barbara. I owe you.
Oh, I owe you too. It made you happy. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.